So hi everyone, good morning. So today I'm going to present some of the findings of a systematic review carried out in the context of the IDOR Institute for Research and Education in Brazil. So just to give some historical context, beliefs in spirits and in the communication between the living and the deceased are found across different cultures and religious or spiritual traditions. Of particular interest to us is the experience of mediumship, during which individuals, often called mediums, are said to communicate with or serve as intermediaries for spirits of deceased persons, other spiritual beings, or even other conscious energies or forces. Mediumship practices form an important part of the history of modern spiritualism, a movement initiated in the late 19th century based on belief in afterlife and communication between the living and the deceased. Among the spiritualist practices of the time were table turning, table talking, initially popular as a form of entertainment. Spiritualist séances soon attract the attention of intellectuals and academics from various disciplines, motivated by the many reports of ostensible physical and mental phenomena associated with mediumship. One of the most controversial types of mediumship is certainly physical mediumship. In the annals of modern science, few subjects are as enigmatic and perplexing. This phenomenology includes the alleged manifestation of spirits through anomalous physical phenomena such as spontaneous movements, for example, levitation, rotation of tables or other furniture, sometimes without any identified physical contact or connection, unexplained sounds or knocks, heard on furniture and other parts of the seance room, inexplicable appearance and disappearance of objects, lights with no discernible origin, and even in some cases, reports of materialization of spirits in partial or full form. You already know all that, but it's important to have more detailed definition, especially for those who are not so familiar with this literature. So physical mediumship phenomena are typically observed in the presence of a physical medium who is believed to facilitate their occurrence. In most cases, the observed phenomena were determined to be the result of fraud and trickery. Various psychological explanations were also proposed at the time to account for reports of apparent physical anomalies, including perceptual illusions, hallucinations, expectancy suggestion effects, memory and attentional biases, fantasy proneness, and ideomotor action or unconscious muscular movements. On the other hand, coming from skepticism and ruling out detectable fraud and other biases, many eminent academics such as William Crookes, Charles Richet, Pierre Curie were convinced that some strange effects during seances were genuine, though unexplainable by available methods and frameworks. There was some discussion in these initial investigations regarding the best hypothesis. Some argued in favor of the survival hypothesis, according to which physical mediumship provides evidence of an afterlife, while others defended the telekinesis or ideoplasty hypothesis, which explains this phenomenon in terms of a human ability to project thoughts and unconscious imaginary creations in the outside world. The survival hypothesis made sense to some in view of the apparent intervention of an independent intelligence in some of these phenomena, such as raps conveying veridical information about a disease that could not be obtained by normal means. Most studies are very old, late 19th and early 20th centuries, but there were some attempts to reproduce the phenomena in a more secular context from the second half of the 20th century onwards. Following the work by Bachelor, a series of so-called psychokinesis or PK-sitter groups were formed with the aim of emulating the social and psychological atmosphere of old spiritualist gatherings, but without presupposing spiritual forces or agents. The focus was thus shifted from the medium to the group. Other similar attempts included John Neihardt and the Society for Research in Rapport Telekinesis, Toronto Society for Psychical Research, and others. The physical phenomena in these groups partially parallel those of 19th century, especially regarding table tilting, levitations, and strange noises or raps. It is truly remarkable to verify the deep fascination and commitment of some highly reputable scientific figures to the exploration of these paradoxical occurrences. Despite the ridicule that their ideas attracted among mainstream academics, the fact is that part of the evidence they obtained remained without explanation. After more than a century, this remains a poorly understood and controversial area of research. Despite this, the phenomenology of spiritualist sciences offers singular opportunities for the investigation of human cognition, including how cognitive illusions and anomalous experiences in the clinical population emerge and are maintained. This is an interesting argument for publications in more mainstream journals. The variety of anomalous perceptions and sensations typically reported during spiritualist sciences makes them privileged settings for investigating the phenomenology, cognitive features, and psychosocial impact of these experiences. In the context of parapsychology, the investigation of major paranormal phenomena, to use Stevenson's terminology, could eventually offer a more objective path to comprehending psi processes beyond the usual debates around statistical significance, replicability, and effect sizes. It could also elucidate other phenomena such as poltergeists. Finally, the study of physical mediumship may provide more ecologically valid means to the study of psi in everyday life. To better comprehend the physical phenomena of spiritualist sciences, it is important to systematically map the evidence and applicability usefulness of existing hypotheses. Despite the large corpus of literature on psi phenomena since the early 19th century, there is currently a dearth of information on the profile of publications on physical mediumship, and no previous review has quantitatively mapped research in this area. So we need to know more about the characteristics of the studies and methodological procedures. What types of physical mediumship were investigated? Who are the main researchers? How has the field developed over time? What are the main methodological procedures? How can we improve such procedures? So the answers to these questions are important to identify possible strengths and limitations. So with these questions in mind, our study aimed to provide a systematic overview and critical assessment of the literature. So in 2022-2023, we searched different sources and databases for publications related to the following keywords or subjects: physical mediumship, mediums, spiritism, psychical research, and specific physical mediumship phenomena such as upwards, table turning. I will show you a table about this later. A fundamental source was the collection of papers by parapsychologist, historian, and researcher Carlos Alvarado, which initially yielded 110 peer-reviewed publications focusing on physical mediumship. References from the Alvarado papers were listed, following which a search on Google Scholar was conducted for papers of interest, ensuring no duplication. This search on Google Scholar rendered other 1,039 references. We also relied on two other sources: Adrian Crabtree's comprehensive annotated bibliography on animal magnetism, early hypnotism, and psychical research, which yielded 477 references, and the Society for Psychical Research catalog available on their website. While the above-mentioned sources do not cover all the publications in this area, they nevertheless afford us a more comprehensive and inclusive overview than previous studies. Based on the first total of 2,567 references extracted from the databases, we employed the inclusion criteria to select those references that were specifically relevant to the review, resulting in a total of 1,678 publications. Our inclusion criteria comprised any reference, articles, chapters, books, conference presentations, dissertations, theses, with either empirical or theoretical contributions regarding physical mediumship and associated topics. No constraint of date or language was adopted. The search process and inclusion-exclusion of references were performed by Sonali and then reviewed by me, who decided on the final classification. Here is a list of the phenomena considered in the identification of articles related to physical mediumship. This list also assisted us in the analysis process. The phenomena reviewed included apports, levitation, materialization, ectoplasmic phenomena, wraps or wrappings, stable associated phenomena, and a larger category of other physical anomalies. All three authors collaborated on the data analysis and discussion. After the search, the results were exported to Microsoft Excel software for the analysis. We extracted from each reference the following information: year of publication, type of publication, language of papers, authors, subject matter, and information about the journal type, whether it was mainstream journal, parapsychology, psychical research journal. Finally, a qualitative examination of the methodological procedures and hypotheses was carried out. So now the results. Figure 1 provides the number of publications by decade. The main period during which works on physical mediumship were published was the late 19th and early 20th centuries, covering about a century of research. The topic saw a decline in publications during the second half of the 20th century, resuming interest by the end of the 20th century and beginning of the 21st century, now with a greater focus on historical approaches. Reports of physical mediumship or associated phenomena, for example, spontaneous movements of objects, preceded the celebrated incidents involving the Fox sisters. The search also identified publications on mesmerism describing phenomena such as apports and non-contact movement of objects prior to the Huddersfield and Rochester knockings associated with the sisters. It is unclear based on the present data why publications on physical mediumship declined over the 20th century after a period of significant interest. Some reasons may include the various cases of fraud, a shift of interest to other topics, such as poltergeist case, ESP, and micro-PK, some of them more amenable to experimental investigation, loss of interest by mainstream scientists, academic institutions, and funding bodies, the apparent decline in reports of major paranormal phenomena, as suggested by Stevenson, and the controversies and challenges surrounding the interpretation of the evidence. Similarly curious was the resurgence of interest in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, which can be partially explained by the emphasis on historical approaches, mainly concerned with the development of scientific methodologies and concepts during the Victorian era and its implications to contemporary epistemological discussions. It is possible to verify in this graph the language distribution of papers, predominance of publications in English, but a few are also found in other languages such as French, German, Italian, and Portuguese. In this other graph, we provide a general categorization of the references. In the first decade of spiritualism, the phenomena were given more emphasis than the mediums. However, this gradually shifted in the following decades, with publications on specific mediums reaching higher rates between 1019 and 1939, probably because the authors realized that the phenomena tended to occur more often with specific individuals. Focusing on empirical investigative studies and excluding theoretical and historical papers, we found that the most investigated phenomenon was materialization, followed by table-associated phenomena, apports, ectoplasmic formations, wraps, and levitations. The focus on certain phenomena changed over time. Initially, the investigations focused on wraps and table phenomena, especially in the first 2 decades of the spiritualist movement. In a second moment, studies on materialization and of the other phenomena took the lead. Although reports of substances or pseudopods emanating from the medium could be identified during that period, the use of the term ectoplasm and investigations of ectoplasmic formations reached higher publication rates only at the first decades of the 21st century, particularly from 1920 onwards, probably because of the use of the term ectoplasm by Richet. Regarding the main authors of publications on physical mediumship, William Stanton Moses, English cleric and spiritualist medium, is the one with the highest number of publications, followed by Carlos Alvarado, Hereward Carrington, Petrovo Solovovo, Russian diplomat and psychical researcher, Ernesto Bozzano, Italian psychical researcher, Eric John Dingwall, anthropologist, and many others. The complete list comprises 120 authors. Several physical mediums were investigated during the history of psychical research, and this review identified a total of 105. The two mediums cited in the highest number of publications were Eusapia Palladino and Daniel Douglas Home. Regarding the types of publications, most were books or monographs. Among the journals, as one could expect, the majority is from Parapsychology, Psychical Research. The Journal of the Society for Psychical Research was the one with the highest number of publications. A few studies were published in more mainstream journals. We have categorized these journals as mainstream based on their ranking and relevance, either regarding a specific subfield or multidisciplinary journals, such as Nature or Science. We have also classified journal articles in terms of their theoretical perspective and analyzed the distribution of these perspectives according to the publication types. Overall, we found that those who had not a defined perspective and engaged in critical discussions about the evidence had more publications in the different journal types. This is interesting because it suggests that most studies were not compromised with a specific viewpoint, but were more interested in critically examining the evidence. Spirit proponents, that is, authors arguing in favor of the spirit or survival hypothesis, achieved the second position, followed by skeptical viewpoints, that is, the position that the phenomena were not genuine, and materialist viewpoints. We could conceive that the phenomena is real, but serve non-spiritual explanations for it, such as telekinesis. The controls against fraud and normal psychological explanations could vary from one investigation to another, but in many cases the authors were able to significantly reduce the possibility of hallucinations, memory, and attentional biases, deception or self-deception, and ideomotor action, by relying on a series of devices and systematic procedures, such as, for example, preparing and examining the room, physical examination of the medium, invitation of external investigators, restriction of the medium's actions, precautions against intruders, adaptation of objects or furniture, tests with supposed entities, stenographic record, use of self-registering instruments, audiovisual recording, reproduction of the phenomena through normal means, modification of the sense conditions, many procedures. These are some examples of tables that were used in these investigations. Here we have two tables developed by Harry Price, psychical researcher, for investigations with the British medium Stella Crenshaw. He had this larger table. Inside of it, there was a smaller table with objects inside, so the seance attendees did not have direct contact with the smaller table. This is another example of an attempt to control for ideomotor phenomena, a table developed by Colin Brooks Smith and used in seances following a Bacheldorian style. The table had different sensors, so it was possible to know when the seance attendees were exerting pressure or touching it. Some of these groups also attempted to adapt tables or develop new apparatuses, such as the mini lab. Professor Jim McLennan made reference to this some two days ago. Well, these are just preliminary findings about fraud and sources of bias in physical mediumship research. So I will skip that because these are very preliminary data. We are still looking at these references. So our idea is to identify the main methods of fraud used by fraudulent mediums and other potential sources of bias in these studies. Maybe it's important just to mention that some authors did not really identify the fraud through direct observation and experimentation, but the fraud was simply suggested. So the negative evaluation of the case was a speculation based on a review of the literature or commentaries on cases investigated by others. This highlights the importance of understanding further whether the critical comments by skeptics are based on evidence or mere speculation. In conclusion, despite reports of some remarkable phenomena in conditions that prevented fraud and illusion, the genuineness of sense phenomena is still to be scientifically established. However, the available evidence is at least encouraging and suggestive of physical anomalies in some well-controlled cases. In this sense, it is important to differentiate the more controlled and sophisticated studies from those carried out under less rigorous control of the medium, the sitters, or the objects involved. The tests carried out by different investigators of different mediums demonstrate that whatever the nature or cause of the phenomena, the alleged physical anomalies could be measured and manipulated on demand, even if not always successfully. The old investigations provide us with the best scientific evidence concerning this phenomena. More systematic contemporary research with the use of state-of-the-art technology is needed to ascertain the reality of science phenomena beyond high-skilled trickery, malobservation, and psychological factors. It remains unclear how common cognitive biases are among participants of spiritualist sciences and scientists studying those contexts. It's really crucial to determine whether their perceptions correspond to objective phenomena, including potential fraud, or if they are better explained by personal experiences and group influence or suggestion. Some hypotheses, such as hallucinations and ideomotor action, were considered particularly weak and unable to account for the best controlled cases. Our impression based on the analysis carried out so far is that some psychological hypotheses were not sufficiently established first to explain the entire science phenomenology, despite their frequent mentions in more skeptical works. For future research, we recommend the establishment of clear and rigorous experimental protocols from the beginning, following a step-by-step process initiating with exploratory sessions, multi-method approach, ethnographic and experimental techniques in the same study, use of state-of-the-art technology, experiments with both sitter groups and potential gifted subjects, the establishment of an interdisciplinary team of researchers and advisors from different fields, and we are currently working on a large project and setup on physical mediumship in Brazil based on these recommendations, and I hope to be able to share some of the findings with you in PA convention next year. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Everton. So we have a few minutes for questions. So,
Thank you. Everton, I need to congratulate you on this because all those of us who have been involved in planning and completing systematic review know how much of a pain this is. It's a brilliant idea until you have to do it yourself. It's extremely demanding in terms of hours, in terms of attention, and I don't think that people who have not had the opportunity to be involved really appreciate the amount of work that it takes. So this is beautiful work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Everton, for this nice presentation, and sure, I'm very interested to partnership with your work to populate our capitalized data about macro PK globally. And also, I also was very interested by the paper you wrote on the SPR about tab tipping. I think it's a very nice complement to this presentation. So I encourage people to read this paper too. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. One of our ideas is actually to share the Excel files with the categorizations and the data with other authors, so they can also maybe run other analysis with the data set. So thank you.
Thank you for your great presentation. I had a question regarding the willingness of the mediums who practice these or the groups to be studied, because in our limited experience, they very rarely want to be agree to be studied. So it's very hard to to study these.
Yeah. We have today, for example, the case of Alexander. It's a medium from UK who is not. He described a series of interesting phenomena, etc., but is not open to scientific investigation. In our case in Brazil, we were able to start an investigation in this regard making clear that it was not our intention to debunk the phenomena. So it is more like a collaborative process. And it is important to have this collaboration even in the development of the project. So to invite the mediums to make suggestions, and then we can eventually say, well, this is not possible. It would be important to have this control. Maybe we could start without the control and then apply the control later. So it's a process that involves some aspect of human relationship. And so I'm not saying that in all cases this is possible, but this is an interesting strategy. I had the opportunity years ago to visit in Northampton a laboratory that Professor Chris Rowe developed inside a specific contest of spiritualist mediums. And it was very interesting because it followed the same approach. I think it was the Arthur Findlay College, if I'm not mistaken. And we followed the same process. Of course, there will be mediums who are not open to participate. This may be an important information in some way or not, but in any case, I think it's possible to find persons interested in collaborating. And we have some cases of that sort in Brazil.
Thank you again, Everton.
Okay. Thank you.